Good evening, everyone. Welcome, welcome. I recognize some of the names here, which is good. You're welcome to turn your camera on. We'd love to see you. If not, no worries. Okay, I'll give it one more minute. Looks like a lot of people are still connecting to audio. We had over 100 people registered for this, so it was a wonderful turnout. We'll see how many come in person. Is anyone else like a serial? I'm going to sign up for every Zoom and then not attend. It's an issue. So we'd love to see who is here in the audience. If you'd like to put anything in the chat about your name, where you're joining us from, what role you play in the food system, whether you're an eater, someone who is a foodie, someone who's a Master Gardener volunteer, for example, someone who works in the food industry, whether you're an educator. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll let Vanessa García Polanco take a look at who she's speaking to in the audience. Love it. So we're streaming live here at Washington Park Library. Tonight you have a double Vanessa show. My name is Vanessa Venturini. I work at the University of Rhode Island Cooperative Extension, and I coordinate two volunteer community education programs, the URI Master Gardener Program and Food Recovery for Rhode Island, focused on food sovereignty and reducing the amount of food that goes into the waste stream and increasing access to good, fresh local food. And we are all here because we were super inspired by the honors colloquium that the university put on this year. And so I reached out to the fabulous folks at the Providence Community Libraries and we said, let's team up. There is this amazing honors colloquium, and the entire theme of all of these workshops that are held on campus and streamed out live is food. Just Good Food is the name of the honors colloquium, and it's still going on. And there are nationally renowned speakers coming almost every week. The next one is November 15th, so you have a few weeks to tune in. You can live stream it. And in fact, Lee Smith, our counterpart here, if you don't mind throwing the Just Good Food Honors Colloquium link in the chat, you'll see you can actually come on campus to see those lectures or live stream them or watch the video recordings of them. And they've been fabulous. And in fact, Vanessa García Polanco was one of the speakers. So we said, let's put together kind of a community engagement arm of this awesome colloquium. That's based in the Providence Library System. So last month, we actually held a community conversation with community gardeners. This month is the fabulous Vanessa García Polanco, who I will introduce in a moment. And next month, on December 8th, we invite you all to come to a potluck. I have never done something like this. I'm so excited to try it out. We're going to be hosting a community potluck at the Wanscott Community Library, which is right near where Vanessa grew up. So there you go. And we will have a few guest speakers coming in and talking about their food traditions and their food stories, but everyone's welcome to bring food. And there is an Eventbrite link that I'm sure we can throw in there as well if you'd like to join. So without further ado, we will get started with this evening. One thing that I'll say is if you are just joining us, we'd love to hear where you're joining us from and what your role is and how you see yourself in the food system. If you haven't got something to write with, we encourage you to go grab that now, whether you're somebody who likes to open a Google Doc, a little note on your phone, actual paper and pen. Who'd think? A lot of people still like it. I do sometimes, because Vanessa will have us do some reflecting on our own food and identity, which is really what we're doing with this entire series. Okay, so now the main event. I am so pleased to introduce Vanessa García Polanco. She actually was a former intern of mine, and I love these moments where someone who I admire so much is now teaching me and all of you as well. So the student becomes the teacher. Love those moments in life. Vanessa García Polanco is actually one of the youngest honors colloquium speakers, or she was the youngest, and she was the quickest, as far as I know, in history, graduate of URI to become a colloquium speaker in the history of the colloquium. So she actually walked into our office at URI Cooperative Extension as a freshman, and we knew she was going places the second she walked in that door. She worked on a lot of our various cooperative extension programs, and she is just a true bringer together of people. She is an inspiration. She was the 2019 Cynthia Hayes Scholar, a 2019 James Beard Foundation National Scholar, 2020 Michigan Junior Food System Leader of the Year, and a 2021 Emerging Food and Agriculture Leader. So it's not just me who thinks that. She actually went on from the University of Rhode Island to study in the Department of Community Sustainability at Michigan State University. Her undergrad degree is in Environmental and Natural Resources Economics. And now she works in the food policy space, actually with the National Young Farmers Coalition, where she is the policy campaigns co-director, and she serves on many national and local farm organizations, and she'll tell us a little bit more about that. We encourage you to actually check out the Honors Colloquium website, where you can see a recording of her talk there as well. That'll be a nice counterpart to this evening. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome VGP, Vanessa García Polanco.
Thank you, Vanessa, for that generous introduction. Yes, the student has become the teacher, but Vanessa Venturini still has a lot to teach me. And my nickname in the office was BGP because Vanessa Venturini was BB, and there were two Vanessas in the office. So we always had to keep differentiating ourselves. So thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon, especially to the community library for hosting us, and from LEAD, from his team for partnering with URI Cooperative Extension. That is really dear and beloved by me as a place where I was able to grow as a food systems advocate. And thank you all for joining me this afternoon. So this afternoon, it will be much less about me and more about each and every one of you and your own food histories and journeys. We're gonna be just using me as an example to get you out of your comfort zone. And now I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Can everyone see my screen? I need someone to say thumbs up.
Looks good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So the title of this workshop, I also call this workshop a toolkit sometimes, because we're gonna be talking about tools or prompts that we can use to tell our food studies better. So it's always, food is never just food. Because for me, and I want for all of you to think about food, about something that is material, but it's also immaterial, something that tells us more about who we are and where we come from, not just something that nourishes our bodies. So for me, food is never just food. It's part of the political, social, physical, and physiological processes to explain culture, society, and systems of power and oppression. Our food system encompasses everything from farm to table and even food waste. I want that we start a conversation about what food is power, and the many meanings behind it across gender, race, generations, borders, and much more. And the best way that we can get started on thinking about food that way, and Vanessa did a little bit of this already, is asking you, who are you today in the food system? And I just want to reiterate, my goal is gonna be to push you to answer that question many different ways. And you're gonna see when I show you all the things that I think I am in the food system. But at the same time, I want to remind you that this is a toolkit. So the idea is that we're gonna give you examples, resources, and prompts for you to flush out and give you some ideas. But how you move forward with information that you learn is up to you. If it's someone you become an amazing food writer in 10 years, please let me know. If it's someone you go and publish a recipe in your local library, please let me know. Because I think the goal is that we share our food culture. It's also sharing who we are and also sharing and understanding and a desire to shape our food system in the way we want it to be seen and do. So my question for you, the same question Vanessa asked you already, and this I want you to write down, and this is gonna be the first prompt in a series of prompts I'm gonna pose to you today. Who are you today in the food system? And many of you really answer that you work in the Department of Public Health, that you may be a Master Gardener volunteer, or many other things. But I want you to think beyond that. I want you to think about all the other ways that you interact with food, aside from the base one, that is being an eater and being a consumer. At least you're a farmer who produces all his own food. So I'm gonna show you some of mine, and then I'm gonna give you some 30 seconds, a minute for you to write more about what identities do you have in the food system. And now I want to invite you to please put in the chat any new identities that maybe you haven't shared about how you relate to the food system. And I just want to walk you through some of mine, because some of them you might not think of them like, oh, this is not worth me sharing, or this is not an identity that I bring to the food system. And I want to push you to think beyond that. For example, I'm an immigrant. I migrated to the United States 11 years ago to North Providence, Rhode Island. And how I migrated to the United States and how I get to do food systems work as an immigrant in the United States is really different from the vast majority of immigrants do in this country. So for me, it's always really important to assert that I have a lot of privilege to be an immigrant in food systems advocacy, where we know that 60 to 75% of our food system workforce is immigrant, but they do not get to have the same food systems advocacy and privileges that I have. So for me, that's really important that I always say that I'm an immigrant in food systems, because I have a lot of privilege with that identity compared to other ones that do not have the same level of privilege, being immigrants in the food system. I am Dominican, I'm Afro-Latina, I'm young, which is a really important identity, because when we think about who are the traditional shapers or food systems policy in our agricultural communities, you don't think of someone young, brown skin with curly hair that looks like me. I really appreciate approaching food from a place of curiosity. So that's why I always say I'm an amateur botanist and herbalist and food scholar, because I love thinking about food creatively and curiously. I'm a Rhode Islander. I love coffee, meal, and donuts, as we're gonna be eating this weekend when I go to Rhode Island. And I'm a policy advocate. So when I think about food, I'm not thinking about, oh, that's a cute little farm. I'm thinking about what policies enable this farm to thrive, what policies enable this farmer's market to exist, what programs and policies allow the URI Master Gardener program to exist. So I'm always thinking with those perspectives. And let me go look at the chat to see what things you share. We have gardener, Italian heritage, a preserver, that's great, a forager, rabble rouser, Austin. Okay, I know what you mean now. And food system, I am not defining the food system today. I want you all to define the food system the way you see fit, because I think how we define the food system, how I will define it versus how you will define it is really different. So I want us to allow for some co-creation and not set determinations today in this conversation. So if for you the food system is from the food store, grocery store to your house to the trash can, that's your food system. If you're thinking of the food system as from the seed that goes to the farmer to all the food supply chains, to the farmer's market, to the store, to the landfill in Rhode Island and Johnson, so be it. For me, thinking of the food system is really global, really political, and is also really localized. So I just want us to keep really open-minded idea what the food system is. So thank you everyone for sharing. And as we know, we all have different identities. And one of the exercises that I want you to do is, when I say food is never just food, it is to write down the first thing that comes to your mind when you ask it to complete the sentence. And please write it down in your notepad where you're keeping notes in your Google document, and also share some of them in the chat. If you had to explain food to someone that doesn't know what food is, I don't know, some alien race out there, or I don't know, how would you describe what food is to you as a human being, not as a society, or as, well, up to you as an individual? Home, relationship, love, accessibility, fuel, nurturing. An adventure, culture, tradition, community, life, joy and substance. That's great, thank you. So thank you all for sharing, because again, we will never agree. Food is many things for many people. And I just really like this really simple definition that the Food and Agriculture Organization by the United Nations puts forward. And that just, it's just, for me, food is all this and so many more things. But it's good to think about food as something so big. It has so many definitions that not even like the National Food and Agriculture Organization can define it as just one thing. Yeah. So moving on. Sorry, I'm missing an image here. There it is. So now we're gonna go into our second writing exercise. And and what I want you to do right now is pick one dish or edible plant from your food culture or traditions. You don't have to tell me what it is. We're gonna share that later. And if you need some that you may think about, especially if you are Latino like me, I put a beautiful list here. And now that you pick that one dish or edible plant, I want you to write down non-long sentences, just with adjectives. How does it make you feel? Yeah. Then write down how does it taste. Trying to close this, I can. And then write down where are you and who are you with. And I'm gonna give you 1 minute to answer those.
You stopped sharing. I don't know if you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I just wanted to mute my notifications.
Okay.
If you know, you will be knowing where I'm going to dinner tonight, which is fine. Thank you for sharing, Ellen. That was beautiful. Someone else wants to share something else that they are writing about? Chickpea curry, sweet and spicy, share with family. Thank you for sharing, Claudette. I also want you to tell me where you are eating these things. That's really important too, because many of these memories sometimes are like place-based. Look how I mentioned New England or the cold winter or Rhode Island in the sentence. Okay, I thought I muted my notifications. I failed. Thank you. So please continue sharing on the chat as before we move to our next prompt. B, do you want to read some of the ones coming in through the chat?
I would love to. These are making me really hungry. Is anyone else feeling that? Chickpea curry, sweet and spicy, shared with family. Christmas cookies baked with relatives and shared around a holiday table. Sauerkraut, cabbage, the persistence of fermentation across cultures, food safety, my grandparents' house near Chicago. I shared how matzo ball soup makes me remember feels being cared for by my family when I didn't feel well, or Hanukkah. Corn on the cob, did I read that one?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you for
Okay.
reading those. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone, for sharing. And now I ask, as you saw, I asked you to tell me more about where you are eating these things, because our next prompt is gonna focus more on the landscape. Sometimes what we know from research is that we are really connected to food because food reminds us of the landscape and reminds us of people. So I want you, for your next prompt, you can keep the same food that you started writing about, or you can pick another one. And I want you to tell me, where are you eating it? How does the landscape look like? Or maybe where do you buy it? So thinking about maybe like a hectare supermarket or like a hectare farmer's market, or maybe a really calm corner store that you like to go to buy some of your groceries. How does your kitchen look like if you are eating in the kitchen? And tell me more about the setting. Like, are you sharing your meals, and where's the food coming from? Like, is it a lot of canned goods, or is it fresh from your garden or farm? So I'm gonna give you 1 minute to flush out some of those landscape questions. Mhm. Thank you for sharing, Ellen and Claudette. Those are beautiful memories. Eating with a candle and eating at the garden. That's definitely really a lot of ambience and resources. Yeah, well, definitely go further. Tell me if it is like the candle smells, or if it is in a candlestick, or how does the garden smell? For our next prompt, and before we wrap up landscapes, it's really important that when you are writing this, you are also thinking the landscapes that evokes to you. So I included a lot of pictures of like the Dominican roadside and the Dominican countryside, because when I eat Dominican food, I remember eating in the countryside with my family. So for me, when I eat Dominican food, it evokes all of those memories. So also think about that connection to identity, memory, and landscape. Because when we present all the trifecta is when we are properly more representing our food culture. Yeah. And this is, as a person who's really curious about research, loves asking people 1,000 questions about their food ways. This is the part where, so now you told me how you eat and where you're eating. Now I want you to ask me why you eat like this way. I want you to start wondering why. And many of those whys are related to culture, and some of them are related to policy, as we will discover later. So I want you to think about your food ways, your food traditions, maybe some of the dishes that you have mentioned tonight. Um, what is like one question that you have that is like burning inside you? Like, why did my mom added this to the dish? Or why do we eat this really weird salad at Christmas when everyone else is eating something else? And obviously, I just can't even generalize, because every food culture, every household food culture, every person's food culture is so different. So I cannot even like give you an example. I can tell you that one year for my Christmas, we had a Dorito taco lasagna as our Christmas meal. And yeah, no, everyone can probably have that during that Christmas that year. But there are questions about your food culture and about the way you eat that you probably have been thinking about for a while. So I want you to think about one question that you want to ask, and ask, who are your informers? Who can you ask about for more information to learn about why did this happen? Or why do you eat this way? Or maybe you need to ask yourself. Most of the time, our food culture is shaped by convenience, culture, and identity. So many times when we're deciding what foods to eat, we are negotiating our cultural backgrounds, what food is acceptable to us, and what food values we also want to preserve. So ask yourself, if some of the questions that you may have are related to your family, your culture, and identity, so maybe you can ask family members to determine if it is a food history there, or how this plate or dish became part of your food waste. Or if it maybe it's what information do you need to answer this? Like, do you need to go look at printing records or records of some of things that were introduced in Rhode Island during a certain period of time, and that maybe that's why we eat something. And then how do you want to communicate that? Do you just want to recreate a dish, or you maybe want to write down the recipe? For example, in the Dominican culture, we use adobo or sazon goya a lot to cook. But I noticed this was only happening with people that had traveled outside the United States. So basically, this thing that was part of our food culture was actually like an add-on due to traveling to the United States and bringing it back to the Dominican foodways. So I was able to track some of that by asking questions in my family of when they started buying certain products based on the convenience that they have in New York City versus Dominican Republic, and how that changed our food waste as a family even until today. Because I'm the only one person in my family that doesn't use adobo or sazon goya when making rice. But in my family, in many other Latino households, that has become the norm now. Does anyone wants to drop a question that they may be thinking of answering, that they want to know more how to answer a question about their food culture or food ways? Thank you for sharing, Ellen. Yeah, sometimes we know. Sometimes it's just asking our family members or asking ourselves, when did I start making this food choice? How did this become part of my food ways? For my mom, why is everything boiled? Mm-hmm. And this is my favorite section because it becomes, when you start asking these questions, is when you start really getting to know many other people in your life. When you start maybe challenging some of the misconceptions or conceptions that you have about your own culture, your own family. So there's no right way to do this. I just encourage you to at least ask one question at your next dinner table or next holiday meal about why something is done X way. So for you can even engage in more meaningful conversations. And for here, just to give another example, I included a picture of tomatoes here because this is one of the things, this is my theory. I cannot confirm or deny it. Please, someone help me answer this one. So as you know, it's really common in the southeast of the United States, especially we African Americans, to prefer green tomatoes over red tomatoes. For some reason, in my town, in the Dominican Republic, we all prefer green tomatoes. We have no idea why, but any place you go in my town, in the Dominican Republic, everyone sells green tomatoes over red tomatoes. And you can find green tomatoes in salads and sandwiches, but over red tomatoes. I don't know how this became a regional or really locally specific thing that my town does, but it also happens to happen in the southeast of the United States in predominantly African American communities. Is there a connection there? I don't know, but it's one of the many questions that I have about my own food culture. Okay. For this next exercise, we're gonna be talking about memory. So this is the one that I want you to put away all the notes you have been writing about maybe a curry or a family dinner, a Thanksgiving dinner, a Christmas dinner, or like the cauliflower casserole. And I want you to pick maybe one of these 5 cookies. If we were all together in person, how this exercise is done is that we all eat the same cookie at the same time. I like to spice it up and do it a little differently because there are many things across foodways who we may not know, and many of the things that we actually have in common. Oreos, for example, many of us have an Oreo. Many of you probably have never heard of half of those cookies here, but I know what those are. And if you are from my town in the Dominican Republic or Dominican, you may know some of those. So I want you to think about a cookie, a treat, something from your childhood, maybe something that you will have at recess. And I want you to close your eyes and remember how it felt to eat it, to taste it. How does it taste? How does it smell? Where are you eating it? Now, I would love for you to tell me what cookie or dessert are you thinking about, and what is like in one word, what is the memory about? Dunkin' Donuts, peanut butter, chocolate chips, ginger cookie, Girl Scout cookies, black and white cookie, pan dulce. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And usually, this is the beauty of trying to pick something that is so unbound. I asked you to pick a cookie from your childhood, and everyone gave me so many different answers. So that's like really amazing that we're all doing the same exercise with different foods, and we're having a lot of similar reactions about childhood, nostalgia, holiday, and family. So that's really beautiful, and that's the power of food. Even when we are sharing different food products, we're having same memory triggers. And that's because why we think about food and not just being a material thing is because at least it's the same values and memories. So thank you everyone for sharing. Okay. And now we're gonna get to the most exciting part, in my opinion, but a little challenging for others, is the policy part. So in the United States, we have a really specific policy called the Farm Bill that is every 5 years shapes a lot about how we eat in the United States. But there's also other policies like the dietary guidelines for Americans that shapes what food we eat in the cafeterias and what food our nutritionists and doctors tell us is healthy, that is outside the Farm Bill. So I want you to think, if you can name it, maybe a policy that changed the way you eat. And you may have to think a little hard on this, and I obviously feel free to ask many questions as you feel needed. And sometimes when we think of policies, we think of big policies, like the ones that are passed here in DC. But sometimes could be policies that are passed locally. For example, in many counties in Michigan or in school boards, like in Providence, people can come together to pass changes on how school meals are served. So they include more vegetables or more fruit or more local fruits and vegetables. So I want you to think about maybe one policy, if you can name it, or a programmatic change in your life on how you access food that change the way you eat. And I will give you an easy one. Shaw's and Stop and Shop, like every 3 to 5 years, they reorganize the entire supermarket, and then it will take you so much longer to find the food that you were looking for. So that may not sound as a policy decision, but it's a policy decision that the store made to change how they reconfigure the store, and you, the shopper and the consumer, now took you probably 6 months to a year to learn where everything was now in the new grocery store. Was a new farmers market open near you? That was a policy decision because it allowed for programmatic and for state, local, federal funding to enable a farmers market to be there. In Rhode Island, we grow a lot of greenhouses products. We're one of the top states for greenhouse products, and also soil like grass. So how did that shape our landscape and our foodways? If you're feeling stuck, feel free to drop a question in the chat. This is usually the hardest one that we have to workshop because we think ourselves so removed from policy, but policy is affecting us every single day. The way we eat, the way we live, the way we farm, and so many other things. Okay, I love this example, but it's really sad, Carrie. Thank you for sharing. A local food co-op shut down because it couldn't financially support the store. So I think that's a great example where there was no policy in place to support a co-op. But obviously really sad that it had to shut down. And obviously this one, someday I would love to have chickens, but the ordinance in my town doesn't allow for chickens. So again, I think we're seeing a deficit model. So a lot of you are approaching it from a deficit model, which I don't hate it, but I don't love it, but I don't hate it. So we can continue being what policies, you're ahead of me in this exercise. What policies are also needed to have the desired food culture and landscape that you want? Yeah. Food is more expensive. Yes, we can definitely call that a lack of policy intervention there. There's more plant-based milk in stores instead of cow's milk. And we can definitely talk about different policy interventions there. Yes, thank you, Carrie. That's my favorite one. That's Double Up Food Box. That is also called the GovSNAP program. And that's the program that allows you, when you go to the farmer's market, for food to your SNAP benefits to double up in the farmer's market. And that's a federal program, a federal law in the Farm Bill that affects farmers markets almost nationwide. All the farmers markets around Providence, that's true. City council and the mayor office had to be okay with all that. Okay, so please remember some of the things that you shared, the ones that you were like, I'm really passionate about this co-op or about plant-based meals or farmers markets. And now I want you, tell me why it's important to you. Why do you care about farmers markets? I care about farmers markets because the food quality is much better and I can find culturally appropriate foods there. I believe farmers, and then I want you to think about what is important in a bigger issue. Like, is it important because we need better food security and access? Is it important because farmers need to make more money while selling directly to consumers? So I want you to focus on step 1 and step 2, and then we're gonna go to the next steps. So I'm gonna pick the farmers market example for this one. So I chose the farmers markets are important to me. And I'm telling you why they're important. Why do I think they're important? I'm gonna give you 30 more seconds on step 1 and 2. Okay. So we said I'm gonna show you a step 3 and step 4. So farmers markets are important to me. I believe farmers markets are important because they allow consumers to access to more nutritious food and food that is culturally competent to them. I remember the first time I took my grandma to my local farmers market that I was running, and she found green tomatoes. Remember the story about green tomatoes that I told you how culturally important they are for my town and people from my town? And that was the first time in the United States after 24 years here that she had found green tomatoes, because they can only find it in other farmers markets. She could find culturally competent food that was accessible to her, because in the mainstream grocery store, all the tomatoes were red. That's step 3. Step 4. And I care about farmers markets because they're an opportunity for people to assert agency and sovereignty about the food that they want to consume. Okay, so I'm gonna give you 1 more minute to flush out step 1, 2, in case you haven't, and 3 and 4 right now, especially. Okay, so I'm gonna recap myself. Step 1, what is important thing to you? Farmers markets. What is important? Step 2, because I believe they are an important avenue for us to have culturally competent food and to access nutritious food. Step 3, describe memory involved in this thing. I remember the first time taking my grandma to the North Province Farmers Market that I was running. It was the first time in 25 years of living in the United States that she has seen green tomatoes available to her, because in the main supermarket, there were only red tomatoes available. 4, what is the underlying value? I believe that people should have agency and sovereignty to choose the foods that are more competent and for them. My issue is we should be investing more money on farmers markets and for farmers to grow culturally competent foods. So can you tell a food study like this? And when we're talking about storytelling, this is a storytelling for advocacy. If you were to run into your mayor, city council, senator, representative, state senator representative, your governor tomorrow, this is the way you should tell your story about the things that you want out of your food system. Because you are saying what is important to you, you're describing a memory that is deeply personal, and you are rooting it on a value. And obviously my value was a bill of aid, but your value can be hard work, it can be community, it can be health, it can be many other things. And then last, you connect it to the issue. And this is the same method that how we train people before they take a meeting with a congressional, with a member of office, with member of Congress, or with an elected official. This is the same method that we will train someone so they can hit all the steps, because that way your story will be memorable. They will know why it's important to you. They will be able to connect based on values, and you will be really specific about the issue. Does anyone have any questions on how to do this? And this is more like a storytelling for advocacy. And by the way, this is what I do every single day, representing farmers in DC. Well, if another questions come up, feel free to drop it. Repeating the example, okay. Okay, farmers markets, step one. I'm choosing farmers markets because they're important to me, because I believe they're an important venue where people can find food that is culturally competent to them, that is accessible, and that is nutritious. I remember step three, the first time I took my grandma to the North Province Farmers Market that I was running, and she found green tomatoes. Remember the story about green tomatoes? I told you why they are important. I can obviously repeat all that here too. Green tomatoes are really important in my culture because we like getting our sandwiches and salads. In the main supermarket, you can only find red tomatoes. So my grandma was really excited and happy. I believe we need more farmers market access so we can all have agency, that's the value, step 4, and decision making over how we shape our food system. Because we know the customers interacting with the farmers directly, the farmers can change what they're growing based on the customers and in the community they're serving. And that's why this is the issue, step 5. I believe you should invest more money in supporting farmers markets. And again, I'm talking to a member of Congress or an elected official. In DC, I will be super specific and tell you the name of the program and what is it called. For this purpose, I'm keeping it really vague for a city councilor, for a mayor. You are literally just asking them to support more farmers markets. Okay. Was that helpful, or do you want another example, or is this setting good? You understand how to do it if you were to see Mayor Lorsa tomorrow? Okay. I used to have a list of values, but I think I lost it. Actually, I just Google values. The same way I Google action verbs for resumes. Yeah, because and also it's also really good to see what the elected official you are talking to, what are the values they usually put in their campaign materials. So you can connect it to maybe one of those values. Because sometimes we are talking about the same things, the same underlying value, but we may call it something different. Like I call it agency and decision making. Other person might call it something else. Yeah. So now for our remaining time together, I want to focus on tools. I gave you writing exercises. So the next time you're writing anything, or you're reflecting on your food culture, ways in food system, you can think about those things. But now that you do with this, what do you do with this? I mentioned publishing a recipe or writing a cookbook, maybe. But I want to give you some other examples on the ways that we can do this softly every day. Because I do believe one of the most powerful tools that we all have to engage with our food system is just caring about food. The biggest thing that you can tell me that will break my heart is to tell me that food is just food. And as the name of this workshop says, food is never just food. So for example, engaging on social media. There have been many exciting projects where people documented their food waste in a way that brought up social change. For example, an Instagram account was created where they were just documenting gentrification based on all the food businesses that were changing on their neighborhood. Another one was a Twitter account that was only focused in highlighting foodways from Mexico. We are focused on tacos, focuses on taco history, and also just eating tacos. It was great to follow that account. And obviously, this sounds like a project, and they are, but it could just be you posting your favorite foods on Instagram, on social media, and sharing why they're important to you. So when people are thinking about the farm bill next year, or when people want to cut SNAP, they're remembering that food is important to our everyday lives. So a lot of what we are trying to push all of you to do here is to just to share your food ways, share your food studies, stories, no food studies, because that's the way we bring food to the front and center on who we are as human beings, and allows us to connect with more people and to care about food as citizens and as advocates. And it could just be, again, what I said, just posting on social media. I was not always Vanessa giving speeches and presentations. I was just Vanessa taking cute pictures of the food that I was eating, or I was learning to eat new foods that were not just Dominican food, or I was visiting farms. So it could just be you celebrating your food ways and sharing it with your loved ones. And then if you want to do more writing, I was afraid of writing, which is hilarious now because I literally had to write for a living. But I didn't get comfortable until someone invited me to write a guest blog for their agricultural organization. And those were my best essays. Those are my 3 essays that I wrote. And those are like one of my favorite essays because they allow me to be really vulnerable and allow me to reflect on things that were really important to me around food, agriculture, my identity, and policy. Let me see. Okay. Yes. So we have many local newspapers, blogs, and many other venues where you can try to just share your food ways and your food stories. And I just want to really focus also on pictures. Like most of us have a smartphone and can be taking really beautiful pictures about how, and sometimes a picture speaks 1,000 than words, speaks louder than words. So just be sharing what you are doing and how you are interacting with the food system, sharing you cooking, sharing how you are sourcing these ingredients. Some of my favorite photos are just me being silly at the farmers markets. So definitely never forget the power of just documenting how you are interacting with the food system. And then we can move to storytelling. Obviously, a lot of what we did today was a storytelling exercise. So I want you to start thinking more about what are spaces where you can be telling your stories if you are comfortable. Because a lot of the ways we hold and change the food system is by learning how other people eat differently than us and interact with food different than us. So storytelling is the most powerful tool that we have for food system change. Austin, feel free to tweet that one. And documents are more like big projects. I have done a lot of collaborative document making, which is really fun. But documents can look really differently, and they can be visual or not. For example, many of us are familiar with the pyramid or my plate that says the dietary guidelines for Americans. This is the Dominican dietary guidelines on a mortar and pestle of wood that is really common in Dominican kitchens. And I love this because it shows us a different interpretation or food waste. So sometimes when we're thinking about maybe creating a recipe book or something, we're thinking so linear of what has been done before. We forget there are many ways to recreate in the wheel. For example, for a study abroad, I went to Mexico for 3 weeks with my classmates. And when we came back, we put together a recipe book or favorite recipes. that we learned to make, and we all still have that book and we still use it. So maybe for your next vacation, you want to document some of the recipes and the foods that you eat, and you can do that as a gift later for your loved ones. So now next time they come over and you're making pasta after your Italy trip, you can share many other things you learn about the Italian food ways or any other things. And the sky is the limit when we want to think about creatively about how we share our food ways. Also, if you don't know where to start reading, we are living in the best moment for food writing. I find a lot of inspiration from food writing that other Dominicans have done, that others are doing in other culinary backgrounds. So definitely feel inspired to read and learn about how people are telling their food studies, studies. Yes. And again, I'm biased towards Whetstone, but we have so many other food magazines. Bon Appetit, Eating Well. I think the Oprah magazine probably has recipes too. We have Edible Roti, which is one of my favorite magazines because it's like it tells you so many great localized stories about Rhode Island foodways and Rhode Island food businesses and farms. So definitely, if you feel like, oh, I cannot tell my food story, I am not worth it. I'm just a person in Providence, Rhode Island. No, anyone can be sharing their food story. So if you're not feeling brave enough, I hope you find inspiration in publications like this, and also localized publications like what I like Edible Roti, Rhode Island Magazine, and many other food writers over there. And now I want you to tell me if there is something from this workshop that you feel inspired to follow up upon. What is something that you want to go deeper? Maybe you want to just use our time remaining to go write down a recipe that you have been meaning to write. Or maybe you just want to write down a really long blog post or write down a really long caption for your next picture on Instagram related to your dinner or a meal that you have. What is something that inspires you about communicating who you are, who you're coming from, and the food system transformation and the food system that you want to see after this workshop? If you don't mind sharing on the chat and writing it down so you can walk the talk later. Understanding your parents' food culture. Okay, Anna, that's really broad. Can you make a little bit more specific? Do you want to schedule a 30-minute interview with your parents to ask them about the food waste? That's my suggestion. Create a recipe book when we gather with your family for a holiday visit or vacation. That's a great idea, Ellen. What was the slide before this one? You mean this one, Lisette? Okay. Mm-hmm. Does anyone need help worshiping their next step if they want to take it? It's not mandatory that you have to take a next step, but again, this is a workshop. The idea is that you are worshiping something, worshiping or working on something after or during. And obviously we had a foundation after some of the exercises I gave you. So we just want to encourage you to continue flushing those out. Including more essential foodways and essential workshops and training. Yeah. And that's gonna be more fun now that the Tomahawk Museum is moving to campus, right, Vanessa?
So exciting.
And I didn't get a screenshot of this, but I wanted to share a really localized Rhode Island story that is really cool. There was an Instagram account started by this really beautiful Portuguese heritage Rhode Island woman, and it's called Buns and Bites. And it's basically, she always felt really ashamed of her body size because she loved eating, but she felt like a lot of people were judging her body type and the way she ate. So she started taking a picture of every food that she was eating and a picture of her rear, basically. She will be holding ice cream, for example, and you can only see like her pants, her t-shirt, and the ice cream. And this account now has over 50,000 likes in Rhode Island, and it's called Buns and Bites. And it's all this idea of celebrating different foods in Rhode Island and different body types. And I think that account is really cool. I would love to show you an example. I didn't take a screenshot today. But it's something that started as fun that she started doing as a way to celebrate what she was eating. And now she gets paid to review food places in Rhode Island. I think we all agree we want that job at some point in our lives, right? We just want to go around eating our way through Rhode Island and visiting farms. I mean, at least myself, and encouraging people to celebrate and enjoy food. So if you feel like whatever you learned today may not lead anywhere, you may become a food blogger in 10 years. I hope you do, if that's in the cards for you, if that is your dream. So that's what I have for you this afternoon. I'm gonna stick around. So if any of you have more specific questions about anything that we went over today, or again, or you're feeling a little shy, you can private message me and I will private message you back on something that you wanna work on after this workshop. Vanessa and Lee, anything else that you want me to cover or anything else that you want me to go over again that you feel like we could spend more time on?
I just want to say thank you very much. It was super thought-provoking and interactive, and I'm getting a lot of positive feedback. I'm seeing lots in the chat. So it's a pleasure having you. Thanks for sticking around for a few minutes.
Yeah, definitely. I also want to check with the people at the library. I never saw how many of them were there, but if any of them had questions about the prompts or anything that we went over.
Amy, any questions from the folks gathered at your library? Amy's doing some amazing things at the library there. They have a community garden, a compost drop-off. They're doing a lot of great work. Amy says, thank you. Everyone loved your talk. Oh, I remember when you were an intern in the MG office.
Best job that I ever had still.
Never forget that celebration of cultures. That was pretty life-changing. That was really special. Maria brings it up all the time.
That's why we had an entire festival called Celebration of Cultures, Vanessa.
Around food.
Yes.
Pretty much it was. Nice precursor to these days, huh?
Okay, this is a friend asking me this question. It's different because here in DC, I focus so much on policy, when Rhode Island I focus more on community. And that can just tell that I definitely know more farmers and food systems people in Rhode Island that I do in DC, because in DC, those are my colleagues that I see Monday to Friday from 9 to 5. And in Rhode Island, I just feel those are my friends, and those are my, not even my colleagues. They're like, it's something else, because we have so many a different relationship. Because it's definitely more grassroots organizing and changing the food system a different way.
Like you have 1 degree of separation from everyone in Rhode Island. I agree with that.
0.5 probably. But it's also in DC because everyone knows each other, and like it's like a bunch of connections. That too.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Lee very much for hosting, and to our partners at the Providence Community Libraries. We love working with y'all. Thanks, Vanessa. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.